right, let's talk about waste, right? Waste versus sacrifice. You know, you guys know that my brand is heaps about not waiting till tomorrow to enjoy today. You know, I don't like when the typical wealth or success mentality is that you have to sacrifice everything for something. You know, it's more about you got to sacrifice some things for everything, right? That's sort of how it works. And so I try and pull everyone back from the whole all or nothing mentality and to try and find that balance. But we've got to be frank here. We've got to be pretty honest here. That doesn't mean you don't have to sacrifice. The way that most people have been living for the majority of their life, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 or plus years, right, is so one-way focused that you can't just start fresh and expect an equilibrium and then start from balance from there. Unfortunately, most people spend too hard live too hard on the spending side. So financially speaking, what we have to do then is we have to go a bit hardcore into the sacrifice side for a little bit to find some form of equilibrium before we can find balance. So you can't have unrealistic expectations that you can just go straight into balancing. I don't want to cut anything out. There may be the fact that for the next couple of years even you have to sacrifice some because you've been living for decades with no sacrifice, right? You've got to be realistic about that. But we've got to understand what the difference between waste and sacrifice is, because a hard conversation that I often have with people is if I do mention that we have to sacrifice something, they get a little bit iffy about it, right? Not realizing that for the last 5, 10 plus years, they've been wasting so much more than what they need to sacrifice. And that's what you got to understand, because waste and sacrifice can be the exact same activity with a different mindset or a different outcome that decides whether it's waste or sacrifice. And let me give you an example. Why couldn't you sit down right now and say to yourself that this year I'm going to sacrifice any spending to try and get ahead financially? All right, just bear with me. Why can't you say that I'm going to sacrifice this year eating any junk food to try and get ahead physically? I'm going to sacrifice for a whole year drugs and alcohol to try and get ahead mentally, right? Or I'm going to sacrifice partying or doing other extracurricular activities that have short-term gratification and use that time studying or reading books for 1 year, right? Now that's a sacrifice because there's an outcome, right? There's a beneficial outcome to you or another party, right? When if we look at the last 2 years due to COVID, potentially you could call it unchosen, I guess, or uncontrolled waste, right? A lot of us, because we didn't know what was going on, we just wasted the last 2 years. We might not have benefited. We might not have saved. We had no idea what was going on during the pandemic and we wasted 2 years. Now, you go, yeah, but I wasted 2 years. Why do I want to waste another? Well, this is where we change our mindset. There's still a chance that with COVID lingering around that this year could be another waste. So why don't you jump on the front foot and turn it into a year of sacrifice instead of wastage? Now, even if COVID does disappear and life goes back to normal, you've still got a beneficial outcome at the end of this year. But if COVID does stick around and ruin another 12 months, at least you haven't wasted it, right? And this is where that mindset shift needs to happen. Why can't you do that this year? Why not? It's probably the perfect year to do it. Probably the perfect year to do it, right? So we've got to try and take a wasteful mindset and turn it into a beneficial mindset, and that can be using the activity of changing wasting activities into sacrifice activities, right? And benefiting. An example here is, right, and this is where we take most people over-exaggerate or overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Imagine this, right? Imagine this. Imagine if you took 1 year to focus on one thing, to get absolute expertise on one thing. Doesn't matter what it is, physical, financial, mental, educational, whatever, right? You could become, if you spend every day on one particular thing trying to become an expert, I'm pretty confident that you could really shoot ahead in that field pretty hard. I'm talking every day, 365 days of getting better at one thing. Let's say you did that and then you repeated that 10 times over the next decade. That's 10 things that you've just absolutely become an expert at. Tell me in the last 10 years, what is one thing you've become top of your field in? What is one thing you've become an expert in? You might have become okay at a few things, but what's one thing that you've become an absolute expert on? Probably fuck all, right? And this is that mindset of sacrifice versus waste. We constantly think, I've got to work, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. You know, I need to earn money to do X, Y, Z. Let's take that example, that what I just said as an example, right? You might say, yeah, but I can't focus on one thing because I've got to do these other 15 things that need to bring me money. Well, why can't you sacrifice a year of income and really bring your expenses down and just expect to live on a lot less for a year? Get really good at one thing. And then next year, you can charge 5 times the amount for that expertise to then make the money that you're making more than what you're making now, plus you have extra time to learn another expertise the next year or just enjoy yourself. And then you repeat that 10 times. In a decade, I promise you're going to be in a position that you never imagined you would be. Stop trying to focus on all these things and wasting your time trying to be jack of all trades, and try and just focus on one thing and becoming an absolute expert at it this year. An absolute expert. Sacrifice a few things to do so, and then repeat that 10 times and watch what happens. Watch what happens.